Hello, everybody. It is Chris, aka Starrapter, joined by Ben this week for Outer Rim Transmission. This is number 80. Big week this week. We have some big Star Wars movie rumors to talk about, as well as Andor Episode 8 titled Narkina 5. That's not all, because we have a brand new Star Wars animated short series called Tales of the Jedi. We're talking about just the 3 Ahsoka Tano episodes tonight, but that is enough to squeeze into one episode for sure. How's it going, Ben?
Good. This week of Star Wars, or this week in general has been a good week for me. I mean, it's been busy, but for me, it's been a really good week because you might have saw my tweet actually earlier this week, but I pretty much said this is the most hype I felt around Star Wars in a long time. Actually, after seeing Tales of the Jedi, it just kind of you know there's so much positive buzz around it and everything, and it's like, man, it feels like Star Wars is at a really good place. Like Tales of the Jedi, I think really helped. Um, it helped, some people, for example, they find Andor slow, etc. Blah blah blah. We've talked about it before and whatnot on social media as well. But the thing is, I feel like Tales of the Jedi, definitely brought back a really nice, positive energy boost to the fandom. That's for sure. And I mean, just jokingly, but I think it kind of helped me like the Andor episode a little more, actually. Just because I wasn't in such a critic state, watching Andor, versus just all right, let's just enjoy this and or let's find something enjoyable out of this. So yeah, I think Tales of the Jedi really was a good kind of shot in the arm to a lot of Star Wars fans this week in discussion around Star Wars as a whole.
Yeah, it was definitely good for the most part. As we all know on the channel, I'm a big lore canon guy. So I wish it was all positive, but at least the people I follow on Twitter, there's a lot of discourse. And we'll get into
Yep.
it as we talk about the episodes proper, about how some people are saying it's retconning the book, and there's a lot of discourse around that. So I'm going to get in there, try to give my own 2 cents, and see how I feel about all that matter. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I agree. I was very much on a Star Wars high after Tales of the Jedi, and it's just like I was telling you, Ben. It was like, why do we have to have all this stuff on one day? You had a whole month of December, guys. You had to put it out like the same day of an Andor episode. Like, come on. Yeah, it was right there. You had December. You could have released like 3 of the shorts for Ahsoka at the beginning of December, 3 of the shorts for
Uh,
Dooku at the end of December, and then boom, go right into Bad Batch, and there you go. That's your consistent Star Wars content every month of the year. But no, they wanted to be Lucasfilm about it, and as much as I liked it, and I'm not, this is a great place we're in because there's times where we had no Star Wars for like 10 years, um, but now it's like, ooh, is this too much? Is this overload? What's going on here? Especially coming from a content creator standpoint. I know I'm yelling at the clouds right now as a content creator. Oh yeah, I gotta watch Andor and then hurry up and get my Andor video up because I like to do those when I have it fresh on my brain. And
yep.
in the meanwhile, if you tell me how this is the best thing since sliced bread with Tales of the Jedi, so I'm like, I gotta get this thing up quick so I can watch those Tales of the Jedi before I go to work because I know damn well if I go to work, I'm gonna get spoiled on the Tales of the Jedi. At least looking at the internet at some point. So I'd rather just not have to deal with that. So I want to just watch everything before I go to work, and then at least I can see what other people are saying because I'm just curious. But anyway, yeah. So it was very much like, ooh, this is as much Star Wars overload as I possibly could have, and then I ended up going and getting like Star Wars comics, and I had to review that too. So I was like, whoa, it was a busy day, and I even told you I was like, I should have probably just taken a day off. If this happens again, I will contemplate just taking a personal day and
Well,
just so I don't have to stress so much about. And I shouldn't be stressing about Star Wars, but I kind of was like, ooh.
well, here's a funny thing. Now that you mention that, so me and my buddy, we were actually discussing this sort of thing, like the content, I guess, overload or a lot of content all at once with Star Wars. So we were adding it up, and roughly, rough estimates say with Skeleton Crew, Mando, Ahsoka, and Bad Batch, we're looking at, in like, if we're saying just by a single week by week basis for 2023, we're looking at least anywhere between about 36 to 40 or 42 weeks potentially worth of content. So the thing is, they're going to double it up again at some point for Bad Batch. Bad Batch is going to have to overlap with one of these live action shows, because if not, we're looking at, I mean, they could spread it out, of course, but we're looking at anywhere, like I said, it's about 36 to 40 or maybe 42 weeks worth of content. And that's not including any of the holiday specials potentially either.
Oh yeah. Well, we actually did the math, or not me, but I was listening to one of the Star Wars on a Roll podcasts, and they had done the math on all this. If the shorts came out once a week and all this sort of thing, it would have been 50 something weeks of or close to 50 weeks of Star Wars this week. And then we seen how we had that big drought. I say drought again. This is not anything worth complaining about when we had a 10-year gap of Star Wars on-screen content, but like there was that 3 month gap where it was curious, like why didn't Bad Batch come out between that would have fit perfectly right there. So just pushing everything back. Skeleton Crew, Ahsoka, Mando, Bad Batch. That's basically every season, right? Your Bad Batch will be all of winter, Mando will be all of spring, Ahsoka all of summer, and Skeleton Crew all of fall. So there you go. If you have your seasonal show, we're getting Star Wars content pretty regularly. Maybe having like a gap of a month somewhere in there every once in a while, but that's about it. I mean, every season getting Star Wars, you can't complain about that.
Oh yeah, that's the important thing too with me. Honestly, I think like having it semi spread out, like, because you kind of hit those waves of content where it's like for me personally, I'm not sure about you or like any some of our viewers or listeners, but like for me, I like having a little bit of time to breathe between the seasons of the shows. Like, for example, I wouldn't want Andor to end in whatever it would be, like 4 weeks from now. I wouldn't want it to end and then the very next week be Book of Boba Fett, or The Mandalorian, or Ahsoka. Like, I want, some time to like build up the hype for those shows versus just like, boom, here's the next episode. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I am.
Yeah, it's nice to have time for discussion and not feeling like the impact of the show is hampered by the premiere of another show, where it's like, that's the thing when it comes to Star Wars, especially with the communities. I feel like we're always just dwelling on what's coming next. We don't spend enough time on retroactively looking back on something, a lot of it. And that's the fun part, like, because when you look ahead of something, that's where the speculation comes into play. And that's where I think a lot of the fun of discussions is, ooh, what do you think will happen? What's coming next down the pipe? And if you have something coming right like the next week, then there's almost no retro look back at the season as a whole. So makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah.
sorry, I was laughing. Here's a fun thing for our viewers too. Our viewers and our listeners. I was just laughing because my younger cousin, he just sent me photos from him and his girlfriend. They're going out tonight as Anakin and Padme, and it's hilarious. He sent me like pictures of him doing like the Force choke to her and stuff. So that's something as well. Like for our viewers or our listeners tonight, like if you're dressing up in any Star Wars costumes this weekend, like be sure to like comment them down below, or send them to us on Twitter, like at Real Ben Maynard for me, Starrapter for Chris, and Milton7Weber on Twitter as well. All three of us, like, we'd love to see your Star Wars costumes. Chris, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I've been muting as I furiously type away, and then I don't take myself off mute. That's what usually happens. But yeah, I mean, as far as the costumes, I have no shortage of the costumes because I'm always going to Comic-Con. Even if I want to play a casual rebel pilot, just going around and just having fun, I could just wear a jacket and some tall boots and strap a blaster to my pants and say, hey, I'm just Captain Kevar or something, just make my own character in the Star Wars universe, which I plan on doing with this Rogue Squadron jacket that I love that I got from New York Comic Con. But speaking of things that I got, and we're going to get into our week in Star Wars, and it will be centered around another Black Series figure because, yeah, I picked up one in which I thought I would never pick up more of these things again. And I guess I have a little bit of a problem when it comes to these because they're so cool and I can't stop buying them. This, as I said,
nice.
is a nostalgia buy. Definitely, because this is Dengar. And this is the Black
Nice.
Series archive version where they have redone the face paint and add a little details. They do these re-releases of the figures where they touch them up, make them look better. And even on the back of the cartridge here, you even get to see like the original Black Series version of him with the good old black and red packaging. So yeah, I had to pick this up because I always have this thing of like, oh, is fate telling me to buy something if I see it more than once? Like that's my big indicator right there because I had gone to New York as I often do, and I was like, let me check out the Target just to see what toys they have, see what Star Wars is like in New York, and they had a great selection, and then there on the peg was Dengar, and I was telling my girlfriend, I said, oh man, you don't understand how much nostalgia this figure means for me because this is one of those Kenner figures, Powers of the Force. I somehow vividly remember I must have been 6 or 7 getting this figure and then just chilling in like the car or basically, yeah, chilling in the car, going into a place to get shoes. When I was like, we used to go to this place in Jersey. My mom would always get our shoes, me and my sister, at this place. And I was just very bored out of my mind. But I had this Dengar figure, and I was just remember playing around and being like so satisfied. Like even though I was bored, I was like, well, at least I got this cool action figure to play with. And I remember I just liked the character Dengar. Just the toy itself is like very the beefier kind of action figure. You know, it is a little. It's got a little meat on the bones, a little bit extra there, a little bit easier to play around. I don't know, but I just remember like it's cool, like this badass guy with this armor and this head wrap thing. It's like, yeah, this is a cool action figure. So that was definitely one of my more often played with action figures. So then when I seen the Black Series figure, I said, "Ooh, I don't know if I should buy this." Like I said I wouldn't buy any more of these things, and she's like, "Oh, you should buy it if you really want it." And I was like, "No, I'm walking away." And I walked away, and that was it. I'm not getting it. I don't need any more of these things. Then the next day, I went to the Walmart on the way back from her place because I've had luck there in the past, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's only one of these figures left again." I was like, That's always the thing. If I see a figure that's kind of rare, and I say no to it, and I see it again, then I buy it because I'm like, okay, there's something telling me, divine whatever out there, telling me to buy this figure because I won't maybe see it again. Or else I don't want to pay like triple the price on eBay or something down the road and then just cursing myself for not buying it for normal price. So there you go. That's my long story about, hey, I thought I was done with Black Series until nostalgia bumped into me and I said, I need to get this thing because this is one of my favorite toys as a kid. So there you go. I'll probably break them out of the package just because I don't like the packaging for the archives as much. But then I started seeing different boxes in the wild on Twitter about what Hasbro is doing with the completely disgusting looking packaging going forward. So yeah, I think it's safe to say I'm just not even going to collect anymore with the Black Series because the packaging looks like total crap. Like it's just boxes now. There's no plastic. We talked about this last week. Probably no plastic see-through. You don't know who you're getting. It's like, what is this, a mystery box now for Black Series figures? I mean, you know who you're getting, but you don't see what they look like. So if you buy a crappy looking face, you're stuck with it.
Yeah, that was my thing. I thought about even after our podcast last week when we briefly touched over, or the week before. It's like you don't know what you're purchasing, but the thing is, if you are like a hardcore collector with maybe an intent of selling eventually, you can't open the box because it automatically ruins the value if you open up the package. But how do you know what product you're getting? That's the thing with that. So it's just like you said, it's like a mystery box. That's exactly what it reminds you of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was the story there. And I did see the Marvel's doing it too, because I was at my comic shop, as I am always every Wednesday, comic relief in Central Jersey. And they have the Marvel Legends, which is the analogous line that Marvel has with Star Wars Black Series, and they're all in the damn boxes. And I just like kind of shook my head. I was like, that's the end of an era. I know they're trying to save the planet, but it's like, couldn't you at least have a little bit of a window? Just a little
Yeah.
bit less plastic used to just be better for the collectors. But I guess people that are looking for the original packaging are just gonna go with the vintage collection series 3 3/4, because at least they'll be able to see those figures.
Yeah. Those are classics too. You gotta love the 3 3/4.
Yeah, and you know what? I was very begrudging about getting a Black Series until I started getting a niche, because they were like, oh, they were putting out more Black Series than 3 3/4 at the time. So collectors were basically stuck with Black Series. And then after a while, you get initiated and assimilated into just feeling like that's your normal thing. And then this happens, and you're like, oh, am I gonna have to go back? Because I went to New York Comic Con, and they had this one booth. It was beautiful. Gonzo was with me. Gonzo was like my Sherpa for collecting at New York Comic Con, because he had scoped out the whole showroom floor. He's like, yeah, man, I'll take you where all the Black Series are. And he took me there. He's like, I'll take you to the booth with all the vintage collection. And then he was there buying it. I was just like, yep, these are actually pretty cool, because I didn't realize how much of a vast quantity that they have released of the vintage collection. They even had the vintage collection figures with the Tarkovsky Clone Wars backing. They had the Luminara Unduli. They had the Barris Afi, and they had the Ala Secura. So the figures themselves looked like realistic, but the card backs they're on were like the animated version of them. And I was like, ooh, that's a really cool collector.
Oh, that's awesome.
Collectible there. So, oh man, yeah, I want to shout out the chat real quick. We got the Art Chemist. What's going on? Hey, just talking to normal Star Wars as we do every 9 o'clock every Friday here, man. Man or woman, whoever I don't know. Aaron Daly, the past week I saw the show called The Toys That Built America on History Channel, and they had an episode where they went into how the first Star Wars toys were made and marketed with the films. And she also said, if you get the chance to check it out, it's really cool. So there you go. There's a recommendation for some, not Star Wars content specifically, but stuff that definitely ties in with Star Wars. But what about you, Ben? Do you have any Star Wars adventures or anything this week?
Yeah, I've actually seen that episode of The Toys That Built America. It's really good. I definitely recommend that. That show in general is a really good series on History Channel, like for, seeing the Star Wars aspect of it, obviously with the Star Wars toys, but there's all kinds of other ones, like, they've done The Food That Built America and so on and so on. So, like, that's an interesting series altogether for people to check out on History Channel. But when it comes to me this week, I didn't have anything like too eventful, I would say, in terms of like I didn't get any awesome like Black Series figures like you had shown or anything like that really for the most part. I would say like for me, I think a big part of my Star Wars week was, as I mentioned in the opener, like Tales of the Jedi bring in a nice like positive vibe back to parts of the fandom and just like bringing a nice like feeling of excitement back, and it just was a good week. And then I saw a video that I sent you with John and Dave getting interviewed by Entertainment Weekly. Like it's nice seeing them like just talk about Star Wars. Like we need more of that. We need more of that. Like forget Entertainment Weekly and the implications from that interview. Like we just need like just them talking more, just release like a 5-minute video every week like that. Like I would love that. And that type of stuff I feel like is what the fandom needs, honestly.
Yeah, come to Star Wars Celebration Europe. We'll see plenty of them. That's all I'm saying. We'll have that panel for Skeleton Crew. We'll have that panel for Ahsoka. Panel for maybe Book of Boba. No, not Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, maybe they'll just do like a Mandalorian panel, but with Ahsoka coming out. And as we're thinking, as I said, maybe just like they had in Anaheim, maybe we'll get the season premiere of Mandalorian. I think might be premiering at Celebration. If we're looking at the trajectory of if Bad Batch comes out, I don't think they'd want to bury it with Mando coming out at the same time, so they'd push that back 3 months from January. We'll get you roughly into April. I could see them showing it off to us there, and then having the Ahsoka panel and all that kind of thing.
When was Celebration this year? In
It's the
April?
first. It's April 7th, I believe, through the 10th.
Okay, okay. See, that's what threw off my scheduling when I was thinking about our calendar year for the content for Star Wars, because I was thinking Celebration was in May for some reason. So I was like, man, this is really throwing the content off. But that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I could 100% see that happening because, you know, Bad Batch, it doesn't matter if it's the season finale of Bad Batch or not. Like, if Mando episode 1 comes out, it's going to nuke the Bad Batch completely. Like,
Yeah.
so they just have to, like, kind of strategically work around that. Or, I mean, a lot of it also comes down to how many episodes the Bad Batch is. Like, for me, I don't know if it'll be 16 again. I just feel like it's going to be like 12 or something. 10, 12 episodes maybe. But like you said, it'll cover at least January, February, March. And then
Hmm.
we'll go from there, and then we have to roll from potentially in the Mandalorian into Skeleton Crew, and then I'm 100%. I would be stunned if Ahsoka wasn't the holiday show next year. Like it
Really?
just to me it feels like it's so like this is my thinking for Ahsoka. Like I mean I could be completely off here, but for me, Ahsoka feels more probably like I would say based on hype, based on the potential of the show, the potential of it basically being Rebels season 5. Um, so like they're gonna play off that hype. So like to me, it just seems like that. Like it feels almost more cinematic, if that makes sense. More bigger. It feels big, potentially bigger than Mando could be. Like just on a galactic level. So like to me, it just feels like it would be kind of in the movie slot for Star Wars, which would be like November, December. Like I think Ahsoka could be launching maybe like how the original Mandalorian did, like the first week of November or whatever it was that year.
Eh.
I could see it being something like that because, yeah, I just don't see it being a summer show. I think Skeleton Crew is going to be our in between show though for sure because they're not going to want to put. Um, I don't know. I just feel like they're gonna have to be careful with Skeleton Crew. Honestly, just thinking about it now that I'm like talking it out, just because like if it's too close to the Mandalorian or Ahsoka, like you could just blow up that show. Unless it's like obviously it could has a chance of being really high quality, but you know what I mean. Just like the hype of the Mandalorian or the hype of Ahsoka could totally wipe out Skeleton Crew. So it's just I don't know. The content schedule is going to be very interesting. Is all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at what we've had, Obi-Wan came out in spring, and that's as blockbuster as you can get, man.
True. Oh
I think
yeah.
I don't think they care about that at the timing of putting this out because they're gonna get the views no matter what, and it all comes down to production schedule. We know that Ahsoka's almost wrapped. There's been reports of the actress that plays Lisa Bordiza, whatever the actress that plays Sabine is, she's done filming. Apparently, this Ezric guy, he might be done filming, and there's no word on Skeleton Crew who the heck the main even actors are for these kids at this point. So, I think they're just going how they would normally go. They're not going to hold on to this to let the other thing finish to swap them. I think it's just get these done in sequential order. Whatever gets finished first, we're putting that out first because we have this huge slate and we can't like risk pushing things back.
Well, and the thing is as well, like talking about these live action shows, it's got to like correspond at least a little bit to Marvel. Like they're not going to want to debut like The Mandalorian and another like show like a season opener on the same day or something. So and I don't know the Marvel content schedule by any stretch, but
Oh,
I'm
there's a
sure
lot.
Marvel has projects coming.
There's a lot from Marvel. There's going to be so much overlap. They got Secret Invasion. They got What If season 2. I think they got Agatha Harkness. They got I don't know, but there's at least 4 or 5 shows I believe. Yeah.
Oh man, another packed year of streaming.
Yeah, we got Dark Nerdy Gonzo in the house. He says, I concur with Aaron's statement up above. Also, recommend a YouTube channel called Spectre Creative, a toy collector who works in the toy industry. Lots of gems to glean from him. So, getting into our housekeeping as usual, we got our podcast available for you guys to listen to on the road, at the gym, anything you are doing, which allows you to listen to a podcast. You can download our podcast on any streaming service of your choice. Just search Outer Rim Transmission. If listening is not up to your speed, you can go ahead and watch us after the fact or live on youtube.com/Starrapter. Join us live, though, because we love to have the comments, the chat as we go through, and you'll be shouted out as you talk if it's something reasonable that you say, at least in the chat. All right, so getting into it, we're going to start off the bat with some quick hit news stories. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on these just because there's so much to review today that I just thought that some of these stories were worth mentioning. So we've been talking lately about this David Lindelof project. We have Jeff Snyder, who is one of the most up-and-coming scoopers that has been pretty much on the money for a lot of these things. And he comes from the good old Collider days back with John Campea and Christian Harloff. So you might have heard him, you might have seen his face around. But yes, he has been really on point with this. And now he is saying that he's got wind that this movie might be replacing the date that Taika Waititi's film eventually got pushed back. This might be our 2025 film at this point. So that is a big deal. That is a big deal because, Taika Waititi, we don't know what the heck is happening with that thing at this point. So the fact that we're getting something in its place, and we have the director from, I think she was the director, she's a writer, Sharmeen Abad-Chino, who is tapped to be directing the movie. So she's involved with Ms. Marvel, and the movie script is going to be by David Lindelof himself, as well as Justin Britt Gibson. And the big thing this week was we are basically going to get after the Rise of Skywalker. We're going to get some content after the Rise of Skywalker. The big news is some of the characters could be from the sequel trilogy. So there you go. Big bombs dropping from that one.
Oh yeah, that one, when that dropped, I believe that was Monday morning that dropped. And like that was a big surprise, waking up and seeing that article and report like everywhere. And it's just crazy because, we've talked for so long on here, like, man, are they ever going to go past episode 9? Or is it just like back? And like, to me, it's good, having the potential of it pushing past episode 9, like moving forward. And, a potential of the sequel characters being in it, like, to me, that, I don't know, that screams it's probably basically whoever, like, if this makes sense, like whoever could come back, like based on scheduling, based on contracts, based on all of that sort of stuff. Like, I think that's kind of how they're going to do it. Like, I think there's a chance, we may see a Daisy Ridley, we may see an Oscar Isaac, people like that, some of the other characters, maybe John Boyega, but that is a stretch, I think. See, like, that's where I'm thinking, like someone, like, that's why they're not directly calling it, like, say, episode 10 or something, because I think it's going to be something along the lines of, like, we're going to get some type of just random Star Wars title and maybe have some of these sequel characters in it, and it'll be whatever they're up to at the time, like maybe rebuilding the Republic or, whatever it would be classified as at that time, and, something along those lines. Or, I mean, heck, if it's not even Rey or Finn, like, you could see it, maybe the Rogue Squadron thing, like, say if that was after episode 9, maybe this, we get some Oscar Isaac stuff, because he's been working with Disney Plus lately, so he's under, like, the Disney umbrella, so it just makes you wonder who's going to be involved. That's the big question there, because, like, soon as we hear who's exactly involved in it, then we'll for sure be able to, kind of like nail down an idea. Like, if they come out and say Daisy Ridley starring, we're going to have a good idea. It's about her, like, rebuilding the Jedi or rebuilding the galaxy, etc., etc. But if Daisy's not involved, then I mean, I don't know what it could be. It could just be like rebuilding the galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking back at another report for Kathleen Kennedy. I think it was from Variety in that piece they put out right before Celebration, where she said they're not as much interested in doing trilogies anymore. They're interested in doing more of like standalone movies. So
Yep.
we're gonna see how this approach works because if they're doing standalone movies, I think they looked at the trilogy, the sequel trilogy, they've seen all the backlash, they realized, oh, unless
Yeah.
somebody's like directing and writing all three of these movies in a row, like the Ryan Johnson one, Mike could be if that ever gets off the ground. Let's see how we work with the standalones. I mean, people loved Rogue One, right? People loved that movie. I
Yeah.
keep hearing it every time I talk to somebody. Almost not every time, but a lot. People will say that was my favorite movie of the Disney era. I get that so much. Whenever I bring
Yep.
up Star Wars, people always point that out, and that's why I'm like, you gotta watch Andor. You gotta watch Andor because that's gonna feed right into your favorite Star Wars movie, in
Yep.
great ways, which we'll talk about in much detail later on in this episode. But yeah, it's something I wanted to mention because it's been weird, honestly, in this era of Star Wars and not hearing about the casting announcements for the next movie, not seeing a poster for the next new movie, not seeing those behind the scenes shots for the next movie. And if this thing is coming out in 2025, it's a long, long wait, but at least they know they're giving themselves a wide berth to conceptualize, give themselves time to make this thing. Because there's a
Yeah. I
lot that goes into a movie. You got to do all the pre-production, the concept art, the scripts, and then hiring the cast.
Oh yeah. Like I think with that, like my thing with the whole situation there, it's like I feel like maybe they need to almost expand their team a little bit or something just because I heard Campy and Harloff brought it up this week on their shows. Like the thing with Star Wars right now is it's like we shouldn't have to wait 6 years in between a movie. Like we shouldn't. We should be getting at least one Star Wars movie a year, whether it be a spin-off, an episodic film, etc. Like we should be getting something because like you have Marvel. They're pumping out how much content a year, three, four
Mm.
movies, and however many shows a year. So it's like I feel like Star Wars is trying to take it with too much of a slow drip approach, I guess I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like they need to amp up production on things. Like it just feels like sometimes to me, it feels kind of like they're dragging their feet, almost like well, we'll get to the content eventually, like, and it's just like why not get a movie out there? Because the thing is with Star Wars, it's even with the place it's in, like in terms of theatrical. At the end of the day, if you put a Star Wars movie out, it will make money. Like it'll make at least a baseline. I don't know, $500-600 million. It'll make a baseline amount of money. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look, Solo got crushed and made like 550 million. So like, you're gonna make something at least. Like to me, they should be putting out stories. Like put out stories and put out stories. Like, and if the movie doesn't go over well with the audience, okay, be like, hey, we got a plan. We got a next movie get in the pipeline, etc., etc. Versus like a 6 year time gap is a long, long time, potentially because Rise of Skywalker was what 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at maybe 2025. Like that's a long
Whoa.
time.
That's getting there to where there's almost that gap between the prequels and the sequels, That's getting
Yeah,
there. And
yeah,
yeah, we keep quoting this guy as if, he should give us a kickback for how many times we mentioned the channel. John Campria. I guess you could say we're fans or we're good viewers or something. But he was saying
yeah.
earlier in the week where it was just like, oh, it's unacceptable. You have this major company and they've been this long without a movie already. Like
A
3 years.
billion-dollar company.
Yeah. It's like how? It's like what? Like this should have been. I remember when we were ramping up to 2 movies a year, And that was a
Yeah, you
big
remember
talking
that back
point.
in the day, like when
The,
Force Awakens, it was like, yeah, guys, we're coming out. We're going to crank out 2 movies a year like Marvel, one in the spring, one in the winter, boom, boom, boom. And then it's like, never mind.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like,
anyway.
yeah, I don't know. It's definitely interesting. I hope though, maybe they're turning a new foot with this potential report from Jeff Snyder about this movie. Like, maybe we're turning a new foot, and hey, maybe it'll be kind of like that thing. We talked about it maybe a month or two ago, maybe 2 months ago now. But like when Christian Harloff pointed out about the whole, Marvel continuity, like the Marvel movies are always pushing forward; they're not going back. Maybe this movie with that Jeff Snyder's referencing, maybe it'll be like the first step of like just a continuous movie push forward instead of going back. And if they do that, then that can open up a bunch of storytelling for Star Wars.
Heck yeah. So another exciting event that we have coming up, and this actually has a date. It's coming up in April, and we already talked about it a little bit. Celebration Europe 2023. We have the key art revealed. I love the key art because this is front and center, a celebration of Return of the Jedi's 40th year. And we got, if you're not watching the video, let's describe it for you. We have basically the X Wings, the A Wings, the Y Wings, and the Death Star too. And they're all coming from the direction of the top of the poster and plummeting down towards the very noticeable buildings of London. You know, the Big Ben and the tower and the big Ferris wheel, the eye, and all those sorts of things. So it's a really cool design because it's front and center. That's going to be a big deal. We're going to have that panel, the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. So for me, it's a big deal because I'm going to Europe for the first time, and as I often say, Return of the Jedi, I believe that was my first time of like stepping my foot into the larger galaxy of Star Wars for the first time. Seeing Jabba the Hutt there in the throne room. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be a really big celebration for me. This is the film that got me into Star Wars, and they're celebrating this big bombastic party basically over there in England. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, things start to get real when you start seeing poster artwork. Pretty soon we're going to start getting those early announcements of, different actors showing up to do the autographs and the whatnot. They even announced official Pixels coming back to do the whole autograph signing, at least the photo ops, I believe. So yeah, there you go. So those of you that are looking forward to it, start getting your stuff together. I mean, if you're looking to go to Celebration, last I checked, there's like 1 day left available to buy. I think it's that Monday. So yeah, this thing sold out faster than New York Comic Con, which was surprising in itself. So, that's what happens when you have a convention that's been in America for the last several years, since 2016, I think was the last time. I remember 2016 was when they were promoting Rogue One, and that's when it was in England because I was watching a live stream. So yeah, it's about time. It's about time that people across the pond, across to the other end, get their shot of visiting the best convention you'll ever go to in all over the world. If you're a genre fan, if you're a fan of anything, Star Wars Celebration is definitely going to be the place you want to be.
Oh yeah, I mean,
so.
it's a really good. It's good that they're having it over there, just because with Europe especially, you can get so many people from so many different countries just easily, even just driving there. Like you can drive all around Europe. We've been there before, and you can just get a car and drive all around. Like just take a road trip 3 or 4 hours. Like you can drive to Germany, to France, to like Austria. Like you can drive country to country, like all over the place, all over Europe. So like having it over there, and it's nice that it's so accessible to so many different people. Like you said, versus just obviously it's not exclusively US, but like having it in the US, like it makes it feel more like US based versus worldwide based. So like I do like that it's accessible to like a lot of people like that. And then it does make me wonder though, with it being Return of the Jedi's 40th, it makes me wonder if they'll do like a surprise George Lucas appearance potentially at that, just because it's like sure, George isn't around too much, But the thing is, I feel like if they contacted him, like even if however he feels about Star Wars right now, like I feel like in the back of his head, he'd probably go, yeah, I could see him going to it just like, you know what I mean, because it's like significant. It was like the end of his saga or whatever, and like maybe they do that because we weren't expecting him to show up at what was it, the one celebration, and he did.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a chance.
Yeah. No, I don't have any credence or any optimism on that front, Ben, because I've been to the last two celebrations, and what we've had is him calling up on his cell phone, talking awkwardly for not even 20 seconds, and then like that's it. It's like, oh, that's what I expect these days. It's just a short, real quick to the point. Ah, Return of the Jedi was really fun. It was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And I'm happy it was made. Enjoy Celebration, everybody. And that's basically
send me my check.
yeah. There we go. Where's my 20K? Whatever.
Yep.
But
that's true.
That's what I would expect. But man, oh man, there's a lot to review tonight, so I want to cut to the chase. We have Tales of the Jedi. And Milton sent us a really excited, very optimistic a review based on the Dooku episodes, specifically episode 4. We're not even going to mention it here because I want to save all the joy and excitement for when he comes on the show next week because I'll just say recommend, just watch the Dooku stuff. It will not disappoint. It's basically quintessential Star Wars at its finest. It's very pivotal to really getting a good understanding of the sequel trilogy, of the prequel trilogy, and that's what I'll say about that. But Ben, we're talking tonight about the Ahsoka episodes. We have Life and Death, we have Practice Makes Perfect, and we have Resolve. So let's just dive into each episode on its own. I don't even know if we're gonna grade these necessarily. I don't know what to do about that individually, or if we're going to even give them a grade. I don't know what to do because they're short, so it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, we'll figure that out at the end.
But let's just talk about Life and Death. I will preamble this by saying this was the episode I seen at Star Wars Celebration back in April or back in May. And yeah, Dave Filoni was on stage, and Dave Filoni is always so cagey, and the fact that he actually got us. He brought the tape. He let us all watch it there. I was shocked that he actually let us see his baby, so to speak, earlier than everybody else. But it was the same thing we seen then. It was the same thing we see now. And I think this was a great way. This is the first episode in the sequential order that you'd watch these on Disney Plus. And I think it was a great way to bring people in because it's very much a tone poem where you're not going to have a lot of dialogue. It's like that silent movie you can follow along, not even have any dialogue, and understand what's happening. The birth of Ahsoka, her basically just being an infant and observing, mainly just observing things her mother, the Togruta people do. The culture that's there is really neat, and nature and how that culture learns from a very early age about survival and everything that's revolving around that, respecting nature and all that sort of thing. And then her being discovered as a Jedi. So I'm going to throw it over to you. Just first thoughts on this episode, man. Or this short, I'll say. I keep saying that. I keep having to erase that when I type it. I keep saying episode. It's a short, darn it.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, I was really surprised about this episode. I liked it a lot, or I guess short. Gosh, you just said that, and I just said episode. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it a lot, surprisingly, just because at first when I saw it was like, oh, this is baby Ahsoka. What's this going to be like? Just some goo goo gaga stuff. But it turned out to be a really, really good short. Like, like you mentioned, you get to see her be born, like kind of growing up-ish, not like growing up to adulthood or childhood or whatever, but like, growing up as in like getting life lessons. Potentially ingrained in her from like an early age, just through like witnessing like what her people are doing, and specifically her mother. So you have those like lessons being taught to Ahsoka which I think were really nice, just because of her character. Her character, like as an adult, is like really like well principled and that sort of stuff, and you can see a perfect connection between even like child Ahsoka to like Ahsoka we know clear in The Mandalorian. Like, you can see that connection. Like, that's not a different character. Even though that's a baby Ahsoka, that's not a different character than what we're getting in Mando. So, like, to me, I think Dave like did it again. Like, he nailed like the principles of the episode, the character, like, and it was just done, really well. Like, honestly, and then seeing the whole like tiger thing, that was really cool, and like startled me at first because I was like, man, this thing's back alive. Like, I thought it was like dead, and then it just like launches up, and it's like, whoa, here, how's all this gonna go down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I will say is I like the mother Bafti and how she has so much strength and agile, fearlessness. She's fearless, courageous, brave. Just
Yep.
all the sort of aspects and qualities that we see Ahsoka has. And Ahsoka never really knows her mother because we know she's at this moment somehow off screen. They're going to contact Plo Koon. He's going to come by to pick her up. So I don't know if she has flash memories of her mother. Probably not really. But yeah, it's interesting. So it's really cool seeing how, and taking Ahsoka out of the equation, what I like about this is what happens when a culture like discovers that somebody's force sensitive. Like, how early on can an infant or a baby exhibit force sensitive qualities? And, their innocence. Their innocence is just a big animal. So she just like gets it to soothes its mind. And it's funny because there's like a lot of stories in Star Wars now recently that have been utilizing the whole effect of a Jedi doing some kind of beast mastery or beast control.
Yep.
Like we've seen something happen recently. I think it was in one of the Star Wars issues that Luke, I think, might have done something like that.
Yeah,
I
I
could
think
be
I remember
wrong.
saying Luke did it in something.
But yeah, I could be wrong. But yeah,
I
that's
mean,
been.
Anakin did it in Attack of the Clones with the Reek.
That
Even
is true. Oh, I often forget
like that's a
about
cool
that.
connection, like master and apprentice doing it.
Oh, yeah, I did not even think about that. But the lesson, as we say, with this actual short, life and death, getting into that theme of we see her being born basically, or seeing her just her being life early on, and her mother just showing her death already so early on. Like, this is the way of things. This is the cycle of life. This is how our people survive. This is normal, and we gotta respect these animals, and we gotta, when we put them down, we just gotta treat them good. We're living off the land. We're it's just a working type of people. So I love that. I love that. For me, that the theme was, very surface level, I would say, but
Oh yeah,
it got its point. It got its point across for sure.
oh yeah. It definitely got its point across. I thought, one of the best parts or one of the best aspects of the episode as a whole, for me, anyways, was what you mentioned to open your talk about this episode was the fact that it wasn't just full of dialogue. Because when you only have 12 minutes or whatever, that's not enough time to like pump in a ton of dialogue, or if it does, it has to mean something and be snappy and get it, keep things moving. So it was nice that there wasn't like an overflood of dialogue, and you could just get back to kind of like what George Lucas talked about with Star Wars. Like, you know, you should be able to like cut the dialogue and still get a gist of what's going on visually. Like, it's visual storytelling, so like you should be able to tell what's happening. And like, you definitely could with this episode. I mean, heck, you could have, for the most part, you could have muted this episode and still got the point.
Yeah, that's like the Kurosawa films, right? Like, are
Yep.
a lot of them kind of the same sort of way, a little less dialogue, but you understand the journey and the mythos that is happening before your eyes. Yeah. Now, get on the same page with me as far as getting that similar vibe that the baby sounded just like Grogu, Ahsoka.
Oh, 100%. Like
I was like,
I was
wait a
thinking
minute, did
that.
they use the
I even
same thing? Like,
yeah, like I even joked to my buddy. I was like, man, we should have like, I don't know how it's even possible. We should have like Grogu somehow meet baby Ahsoka. Like that would be incredible.
oh my gosh. That could have been if they were still doing those Forces of Destiny shorts. I could
Oh
totally
yeah.
see that being one of the 2 minute shorts they used to have. All that.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, what else did I have in my notes here for this episode? Yeah, the music was incredible. I loved
Yep.
hearing Kevin Kiner back. I feel like I'll just say it right now because every one of these is music by Kevin Kiner. But it definitely shines. You get the Ahsoka theme, but it's played a little bit differently. But it just
Yep.
amplifies everything going on there. So there you go. That was episode 1, Life and Death. We're going to move over to the next one. So this is technically short 5, episode 5, however you want to. Practice makes perfect. In this one, we have an expanse of time. We have a young Ahsoka training with the troopers. So Anakin decides tough love for his Padawan and says, droids are too easy and too predictable. I want you to fight against my own clones because if you can fight against them, you're ready for anything. So we see her training, failing, then it fast forwards and she's a little older and they're fighting on the Star Destroyer there, and then it goes to Order 66. So you see the whole purpose of this episode was basically to say, like, okay, this was how Ahsoka was able to combat and have the reflexes and instincts that most Jedi didn't have when their clone brethren took it upon themselves with Order 66 to annihilate them without them even having a little bit of an instinct to go against it. So, what were your thoughts on this one, man?
Oh, I loved it. Like I loved seeing Anakin push her so hard. That was great. As like seeing him as a master, like more is always really nice. Just because, like to me, I don't know about you, but to me, he definitely feels. I guess he witnessed it in Phantom Menace, but Anakin feels more Qui-Gon to me than he feels more like from the Obi-Wan apprentice tree. Like he definitely feels more like in that like I'm gonna bend the rules, push things to the limit, like that sort of vibe, and like that's how Anakin was in this episode for me. Like it's like he was really like pushing Ahsoka to the limits, like all throughout it. Like they would blast her, she would get stunned and knocked out, and then she would wake up and even heard, I think Rex or one of the other clone troopers, like, oh, I don't know how much more she can take, and he's like, well, go again. So like, it was great seeing like that whole master and apprentice relationship, and then of course, like I didn't know where the episode was going. Like when we first started watching that episode, I was like, all right, where are we going? Are we just gonna get like 12 straight minutes of Ahsoka just getting blasted, and then at the very end, her deflect the blast and like, boom, training over. Like I was like, what's going on? Like, where's this leading? And then I love where when it gets to the final cut, like when it she like gets knocked out again or whatever. Like it goes black and then the screen opens back up and you realize you're in Order 66 and you're like, oh man, now everything connects now. Like it's great. Like so like to me, I really, really enjoyed how they did that. Like that was perfect. It was a perfect build up to the end of that episode. Like it really was. Like I think they nailed it. And like just Ahsoka, like you mentioned, getting those lessons. That's a good point too. She got those lessons when all the other Jedi, like they weren't used to fighting clone troopers like that style of attack.
Mm-hmm. So do you think, and now that I'm thinking about it, again, I was only able to watch all these once. And I know, guys, I usually watch everything twice and I get a better analysis of these. So if I'm not as deep on these this week, it's because of that. But Ahsoka, do you think this was like, what we see in the beginning was like a memory of her, like in that moment when she's like walking up with Rex, like, Do you think she's taking a look back at the beginning of her time training? Like that's all
Ooh.
like a flashback from her perspective in her mind of like her in that moment being led by Rex and just like flashing back like, yeah, my training all comes down to this, you know?
That's an interesting point. I actually watched all of these episodes twice, and I didn't even think about it from that angle. I'm gonna have to actually check out that one again because I want to see how it opens. Like because it may open as if it's like we may not realize it on first viewing, but it may open where it is kind of like a flashback or something where you know like you said, maybe that entire episode was Ahsoka right before the whole Order 66 stuff went down when her and Rex were getting ready. I mean, you even hear Rex. I love that he added in the comment like when they were getting ready to do the Order 66 stuff. He was like, "You better hope your training went well," or whatever he said to her, and
Yeah.
it's like maybe now that you point that out, there's a good chance that was just all flashback we watch actually.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. So my take on the episode is this was and I'll give a little bit of a preview of next week. This is the weakest episode for me out of all six, the weakest short.
Yeah.
And I seen some people go online. They're like, "Oh wow, was this was this short made just to fill in a little bit of a detail about Ahsoka just having that one up on the clones?" And if that's the case, it's like that's a little bit underwhelming because you're only giving like six shorts, and one of them is just like to answer a simple question. Almost, I feel like. And now, is there a way to dig in deeper? Maybe. I mean, there's that interaction between Anakin, and Anakin was just not likable at all in this whole thing. Like in the beginning, at least, he was kind of a jerk and a hard ass. He was like, "You're gonna do this. You're gonna do it right," and it's just like the stern voice. And I was like, "Whoa, is this the Anakin that we know?" It certainly doesn't really seem like the warm Anakin that's like a little bit humorous. But then
Well,
you see that way of him come out at the end, and and he gets her to understand why he's trying so hard for her to get to be that way.
well, you got to think about it from this angle too, though. With Anakin, I mean, like I mentioned, he's flexible and whatnot, like Qui Gon, but he also this is just shortly after Attack of the Clones, so you got to look at it from the view of that's another side thing to mention too. I love the transition of the clone armor from in this episode, like how the armor progressed. Like I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was a cool little detail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyways, though, with it being so shortly after Attack of the Clones, you got to think like maybe it's because like Anakin is being, he's just gotten out of the school of strict Obi-Wan basically, so he's probably still kind of
Uh,
following, like he's leaning toward like Qui-Gon style, but he's still following like more of the Obi-Wan style of like more strict. So he's kind of like in that kind of gray area, I would say, of of like a Jedi Master. So like I think it falls in that category. Like he's just trying to find his place, find his place as well. Like how to be a master, like because like up to this point, up to Attack of the Clones, it was a proper like progression versus, or I mean, I guess even before Phantom Menace. So let's say before Phantom Menace, like the Jedi, it was like a proper progression basically up to like Knight, Master, etc. Attack of the Clones, it's all out war basically. So like it's kind of a rushed process, like expedited. So I think that plays into it with his character. Like that's why he was being such like a hard ass at the beginning.
yeah.
Um, but I would say that's probably why. That would be the reason why. But I did find him very like, whoa, Anakin's being like really strict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on with this episode. I was a little bit thrown off by the character models. Obi-Wan has long hair for some reason, and that threw me off. I was like, he didn't have hair like that in the Clone Wars. Is this taking place like before they meet in the Clone Wars? Like, is Anakin just like happening by the Jedi training sparring area? Is like, oh, I'm gonna just talk to this Ahsoka character. But then it seems like he didn't know her when he met her off the transport in the Clone Wars movie. So I don't know if you picked that up, but I was like, where is this in the timeline? Like, this is kind of it's hard for
It,
me to pinpoint, you know?
I mean, it has to be like, it has to be right after, like immediately after Attack of the Clones, immediately
Hmm.
after Anakin, like maybe soon as Anakin becomes a knight, like immediately I would say, because like you said, Obi-Wan still has his same look from Attack of the Clones, basically. So like it just makes you think. I think it's something along those lines. Like it has to be. Who knows? Maybe it's day one Anakin Jedi Knight. Like maybe it's that.
Yeah, I think this could be like because and we'll have a discussion about this coming up very quickly about like the canon stuff with the novels with the
Yep.
Brotherhood novel. At the end of Brotherhood, Obi-Wan gets the clone armor, and then it's after Kanan and Moida, the business that happened there. And then Obi-Wan gets a haircut as he gets the armor for. So obviously there's a inconsistency. Not a big deal. It's just with the hair thing going. And it's one thing from going from a novel to a animated series, but like going from one animated series to another animated series, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting about the hair ordeal. But I can let
Yeah.
that go. I can let that go. It's a minor detail, but I mean, did you also catch that Kanan Jarrus was in the background?
Oh no, I didn't even catch that actually.
Really?
I watched it
Okay.
twice. I watched it twice and didn't even realize it. Yeah.
So the boy with Depa Balaba was Caleb Dune.
Oh. Oh dang. I honestly, I guess I just didn't even. I mean, I remember her being there. I just don't even remember. I guess it didn't even register with me at the time that was Kanan. Like I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so Kanan,
Huh.
I loved his reactions too. Like he was idolizing Ahsoka. He was amazed by her abilities, like his facial expressions, and he could like he didn't really have any dialogue, but like after they get out of the place, like you could see like his like emotive reactions. Like he was like so hyped, like talking to his master, like, "Oh, did you see that? Like, oh, I want to be like that." Like you could just see, and it adds a little bit of credence, a little bit layers to Ahsoka and Kanan in Rebels, because like Ahsoka, Kanan already would know who she is basically at that point.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's a really good observation there that I had missed. but uh but yeah, no, it's definitely cool seeing like connections like that. Even though, like you said, maybe there may be some inconsistencies on some things, but like it is cool getting connections like Depa Balaba and Kanan and like that sort of thing. That connects in like it adds to Rebels more. Like it adds more of that like little bit of their relationship between Kanan and Ahsoka, and and of course like this adds more relationship, I would say, between Anakin and Ahsoka, and then Ahsoka and the clones. Like it just adds a little bit more to it.
yep. So let's dive into our final one for the Ahsoka shorts. That is Resolve. So this is the one that takes place after Order 66. Ahsoka goes to the funeral of Padme. Very sad, very sad. We see Bale's there. We see Mon Mothma's there. I think we see, correct me if I'm wrong, that one character that used to be Padme's lover at one point,
Yep.
the
Yeah.
senator.
Yeah. The senator dude.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But you get to see her like right off the bat, like on the run from the clone troopers. I love how they put the Coruscanti guard in there, and her interactions with Bail Organa, and she denies Bail Organa for joining any kind of program, but he gives her the communication. So this episode is all about the transition from Ahsoka not wanting to be involved with anything to getting pulled back in and having a realization that by the time she was done with what happened on the village, there's no running from this. She has to accept her destiny. She has to accept the idea that she has to be one of the leaders that's going to help rebel against the Republic turned into the Empire. So, thoughts on
Yeah.
this one?
I love the opening to it. Like I love
Yeah.
this first part of this episode. I thought it was so great. Like because now it's that whole fun thing. When we watch Revenge of the Sith, now it's like, oh man, Ahsoka's in the background somewhere. It's that. It's like this is what's going on in the background. Like I loved that from Clone Wars season 7. Like
Yeah.
getting more context, like of like when the scenes are cutting, like from the Jedi Council. Like I love when like shows add things into already existing properties like that, just in the background, because it makes it a little more fun, in my opinion. So it was cool getting that, and then like you mentioned, seeing like Bale and her interact. It's I like out of all the characters, like Anakin, Ahsoka, of course Ahsoka's consistent, but I think the most consistent character, or one of the most consistent characters, like the Disney Star Wars era has nailed is Bail Organa. Like his character's been consistent throughout, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
Kenobi, whether it be this, whether it be Rebels, whether it be whatever. Like they've nailed his character to a T. And this is another example of it. Like I loved seeing him when when he was getting like pushed to like leave that area they were in. He was still being himself, going like, "Oh, if you ever need anything, just call me." Like that whole like kind of talking to Ahsoka without them
Yeah.
knowing. Like I love that.
They're like, okay. They're like, what is going on with this wacko? Like, we get it, man.
Yep.
Just let me take you
I,
back
I
to where you
loved it.
belong. But yeah, so I was very excited to tell you this. In the voice message in our group chat is like, this is breaking new ground. This is the first time a Star Wars on screen TV show movie has adapted a novel. And I thought they did a
Yep.
wonderful job. They did a wonderful job. And it just, we haven't talked about this yet. Just the fact that they're able to squeeze stories from beginning to end in 12 to 15 minutes and make it a complete story is fantastic. So, this is basically takes a lot of inspiration from the Ahsoka novel written by E.K. Johnston, in which Ahsoka, of course, leaves, flees from Order 66, ends up on this planet, this farming planet, becomes a mechanic, befriends some villagers, ends up basically getting beset upon by the Empire, fights an Inquisitor, steals the lightsabers, and then Bail Organa comes down and she joins the rebels after realizing that she cannot run anymore. It's just going to keep happening, keep happening. She's got to take a stand. So this episode, yeah, it condenses the story. Obviously, it's a young adult novel, so it condenses a lot of things, but it gets the essence of the story, and it works. It works. It shows Ahsoka at one place, see the character development through the actions of what happens with the villagers, and she ends up different at the end of it. So, yeah, I thought that's so cool. Like people have been wanting to see stuff like this for a while, and
Yeah.
I know you were pretty hyped about this, Ben.
Oh yeah, I loved absolutely. Well, I for starters, I thought it was great news when you told us that, because I didn't realize that, because I haven't read that novel. And for me, it's like twofold. Of course, like the episode I thought was, or the short was really good. It was really really good. I loved it actually. But like to me, it opens up a lot of broader implications of potential storytelling of other Star Wars books now. Like, maybe we get shorts from a certain point of view. Maybe we get shorts from Lost Stars. Maybe we get shorts from whatever it may be. Any of these books. Master and Apprentice, like something like that. Um, like maybe we get shorts from these things, because it just opens up so many possibilities compared to just like having to come up with new stories. I think you, me, and Milton, we've like banged the drum so many times. Like there's so many good stories in all these books and things. Like why not turn them into shorts or episodes? Look, we talked about it when what was the book that came out a few months ago that was really popular with Luke and Lando?
Oh, Shadow of the Sith.
Oh, Shadow of the Sith. Boom. There you go. Why not do a 6 episode Shadow of the Sith little mini series like this, like with shorts? Like that would be great. Like stuff
Mm.
like that. It gives me hope for more novel adaptations moving forward. And then of course, like the episode as a whole, or the short as a whole with Ahsoka, like like her going to the village. Of course, you knew she was gonna get like busted somehow, or something was gonna go down. And then since I didn't really know that direct story, it was like a surprise to me. And I just loved the fight between her and the Inquisitor. Like I
Yeah.
thought it was so like poetic, like awesome. It shows like her mastery of the Force as well. The fact that he had a lightsaber and she just like disarms him and kills him with it, like that was badass. Like I
Hmm.
loved it. Like I saw some people like, oh, the fight was short or whatever. But the thing is, what do you expect? Like Ahsoka doesn't have a weapon. Like the fight can't go on too long if the guy's swinging a laser sword around. So it's great how they did it, like cinematically, and it reminded me a lot of the Kenobi and Maul fight. And of course, like with
Oh
Dave
yeah.
Filoni being involved, like
Mm-hmm.
you know, what do you expect? Like I just thought
Yep.
it was excellent. Like I've rewatched that little fight, that little sequence so many times. Like I watched it when I was on the treadmill earlier today on YouTube, just a little clip of it, like the little 2 minutes part of it, just because it's so cool. Like when the Inquisitor turns around, he's like, "Oh, it's you" or whatever, and she's like
Mm-hmm.
standing there, and like it just, and like the visuals of it too, like the fire, like it just, it's incredible.
Yeah, they put the whole budget of this series on his cape effects because, man, oh
Yeah, did you
man,
notice that too?
yeah, I remember from there was something with Filoni saying about a behind the scenes with Darth Vader in Twilight of the Apprentice and season two finale of Star Wars Rebels. That was like groundbreaking for them to put in animation for his like billowing cloak in the wind. And here we
Yep.
have the beautiful Inquisitor, and I just love his design. I love just the mask that he has is fantastic. When I first seen this, um, it looks almost like he's like somebody from the Old Republic. We have Dark Nerdy Gonzo chiming in. The Dooku episodes were the best ones. We'll talk about them next week, as I said. Ahsoka's were
Yep.
pretty solid. Loved the look of the new Inquisitor. Wish she lasted longer. Now he's saying he died cheaply. Here's where I'm gonna differ. I'm gonna disagree, Gonzo, because with this Inquisitor, we know a lot of these Inquisitors are previous Jedi. In fact, I think that's basically what they all are: is fallen Jedi. Ahsoka's some of the best Jedi around. She got trained by Darth Vader himself, Anakin Skywalker. I mean, so she's not no ordinary just youngling. This Jedi can kick serious butt. So I have no doubt that she was able to take this guy that was down, that take this guy down that was very confident. Oh yeah, you know, here's this person with not even a lightsaber. This is going to be easy, and she just completely takes him off guard and kills him. I thought it was great. It was just like you said, the Obi-Wan, the old Ben versus Maul and Tatooine. Same vibes, same exact vibes. Just seeing a Jedi disarm somebody. I don't know if we've ever seen something like that
I've
where
never seen
a
it.
Jedi went without anything and just killed the guy. Like that was awesome.
Well, see, that's what, like, I was like, all right, how's Ahsoka gonna get out of this? Like, is she gonna use the Force and somehow like pull the lightsaber away from him or something? Like, I was like, I
Hmm.
don't know what she's gonna do. And then when she disarmed him and killed him, like, it literally was a moment where I was just like, I openly was like, whoa! Like, I literally said that out loud because it just surprised me.
Yeah.
Um, and like for me, I just don't think it was like, I mean, of course, everything's subjective, but like I don't think it was like cheap per se, because it's like, I don't know. Like I said, I just think it kind of was like poetic. It kind of like, I would say, if you look at like her whole arc, like that like is like the cherry on top. Like she's like a full blown master. Like at this point, like this was like her trial, like her Luke beating the Emperor and Vader type trial. Like this was her like final hurrah, maybe, to like be stepping over into like that master range of things. And like to me as well, when it comes to like the Inquisitors, like we all have to remember, like when it comes to them, for the most part, they're not like the most skilled group of people. Like, a lot of times when we see Inquisitors, whether it be in Rebels or Kenobi for that matter, or anything, like they're normally just kind of beating up regular people. They're not beating up like full blown Jedi Knights. And then when we've seen him face like the full blown like masters, I mean,
Hmm.
look, Ahsoka handles them with ease in Rebels, and then even Darth Maul, like when Darth Maul faces them, like
Yeah.
he just goes through them like it's nothing. So
Hmm.
like to me it's like when we look at Inquisitors, we just have to like really like realize they're not, like say if you have like Ahsoka and Darth Maul and those type of people, like they're like the A level, I would
Yep.
say, of skilled, and like the Inquisitors are probably like D level. They're probably like three
Hmm.
levels down from them. Like
Yeah.
you're a few steps removed. So, like I think that's why there's always a discrepancy, because I had a good discussion about this actually with one of my friends. Like when it comes to the whole Inquisitor thing, even look at the Kenobi series. Like Kenobi didn't fight like Riva or the Inquisitors, but if Kenobi was fully powered, like how he is by the end of the series, he could have easily taken out those Inquisitors. Like that probably would have
Hmm.
been no problem. Like it's just like to me, I think the Inquisitors are more bark than bite. You know.
Oh yeah, they are very much for fear, the fear in their eyes, and
Yeah.
yes,
And I don't know what it was like about this Inquisitor, but to me, he gave off a lot of like I seen pictures of the one dude, like it kind of gave off vibes like that Lord Momin guy I saw from like comics or something.
oh yeah, yeah. The mask
That
definitely looks reminiscent of that guy.
yeah, that's instantly what my mind went to was like, man, this looks like that Lord Momin dude.
Yeah, I don't know if like that mask, maybe that mask is like a Sith Lord mask that he
Yeah.
somehow found, like from like the Old Republic, because it definitely gives me those vibes. Something that was a little bit deeper on this episode, which I like, when we get to take those slow moments, even in a short, they had a slow moment around a campfire where you have two of these villagers just kind of having a disagreement or a discussion is probably the better word of like this one character is all about like the empire is good, like the emperor's doing the right thing, we're getting security and all this sort of thing, and then there's the person on the other side saying like no, there's too much control is a bad thing and things are only going to get worse. So in a simple short they were still able to conceptualize and contextualize like the whole idea of like the empire and what they stand for the everyday man. So I gotta applaud Filoni for being able to put that in this short episode.
Oh yeah, that's an important thing. You know, I think we pulled out of this episode, and even, you know, we kind of get a bit of it like through the Andor series because, like, you know, for a lot of Star Wars, we've always viewed the Empire as bad guys, like straight up bad guys. That's it. You know, black and white, and like, you know, you, me, and Milton, we've talked about it before. Like, there are plenty of people in the galaxy that support this Imperial government. Like, you know, so it's like it's no surprise. I guess it's a surprise when we actually see it or see some type of support for it because the Empire is always painted in a bad guy light. And like now we're actually like hearing characters verbally like talk about like, you know, their support for the Empire, like which I think is it's needed because then it kind of blurs the lines a little bit more. It like humanizes them more. Like, I mean, you can only humanize the Empire so much, but you know what I mean, where it's not just a straight up big bad guy at the end of the mission type thing. Like, it humanizes them a bit more because then it's like, oh, I kind of see where like these local civilians are coming, where they're coming from.
Yep.
Because you know, you gotta think about it like from like our perspective. Like, say for example, like if we're living in the galaxy, like for example, even say like let's talk about like say Andor, like the whole thing that happened on Aldani, like that whole thing. What if you lived in like a village right next to like that entire thing? You'd be like scared to death, like holy smokes, like all this stuff's going down. Like, yeah, we want the Imperial security. Like, we don't want to be like left out for these potential like rebels to come in here and go crazy on us. So like
Mm-hmm.
to me, you know, I like that they're blurring the lines a little bit in terms of whether it be this series or Andor. They're blurring the lines a little bit on the Empire versus them just being straight up bad guys.
Oh yeah, so good all around. As much as I enjoyed this episode, I do realize that there is a little bit of people that this rubbed them a little bit the wrong way. And what I mean by that is there's people that think I don't personally agree with this. They think
Yeah.
that they completely screwed up the book and they retconned all this and that. And I understand, yeah, certain characters. To my understanding, there's certain characters, a character that was gay, I believe, or part of the LGBTQ community, that respect, that was left out of this, adaptation, if you will, of the show. And what I will say about that is, yeah, I understand where they're coming from. Like, there's representation for them that is now missing. But what I say is, Dave Filoni had, like, here's the whole idea is Dave Filoni originally had the idea for this episode. He didn't think he would ever get a chance to make it, so he gave that story to the publisher, who picked an author, E.K. Johnson, to basically adapt his treatment for what he expected Ahsoka to do next. So she did that. She put her story together, put it out. People, of course, read it, loved it. And now we have Dave Filoni getting the opportunity to create his original vision. I don't know what happened. I don't know if he read the book, had somebody give him the Cliff Notes version, but I'm just speculating here. Maybe he just kind of did what he originally had in his mind and just put it to the screen. The fact that it's only 15 minutes long, you can't really have a lot of time for any other like real character deep dives other than Ahsoka. Sure, they could have had some kind of reference to that character. The thing was that people really, it rubbed them the wrong way, is the fact that all these characters that were similar to what were in the book were unnamed. If you go to the credits, it'll just be called like Farmer 1 or Farmer 2, where clearly they should have been this character or that character. Even the Inquisitor was never named. It was supposed to be probably the sixth brother, but that's never acknowledged in the credits. So people are looking at this as a blatant retcon that Dave Filoni went in and he just kind of swung his power around and said, "This is my story. I'm making it how I want it." And people are not happy. And I can understand. I can understand if people are really attached to a story, they're seeing it come to the screen. And another thing that is happening here is they're starting to look at Dave Filoni as somebody that's not taking their best interests at heart. What I mean by that is in Bad Batch episode 1, there was a little bit different of a storyline with Kanan. Now, it ended up the same way. Kanan's master died from the clones. It wasn't the exact clones that killed in his comic, in the comic there for Kanan, but it was a little different. But the journey ends up the same. Kanan didn't die at that moment. He survived and he goes on. So what I think is happening now is people are really beholden by the idea that Lucasfilm originally in 2014 said everything's in one canon. Your novels, your comics, everything relies upon each other. Nothing oversteps another. Now that we're having different creators in different mediums taking elements from certain things, putting their own flair on it, people are mad that not every single detail is in there. Every single detail that they're hanging on is not in there. And for me personally, some of this stuff seems like it's a little bit like a nitpick sometimes. But I understand where they're coming from. It's just, I think going forward, people have to understand that if this happens again, just know that I'm happy with the story just because it's simply Ahsoka's getting the same plot that she got in the book. The same character development, the same character journey is just abbreviated. So not all the details are there. And if you want to headcanon it saying, oh yeah, that character was still there, go ahead. No one's stopping you. But Filoni had the spotlight focused here, whereas in these other spots, it wasn't aiming there. Not saying it didn't happen, but again, you can take this however you want it. People maybe headcanon it if you want, or you can look at this as a story where people were orally giving it to one another, and this is the perspective of the story from this one person, and this other perspective of this person. It's the same event, just it's like playing the telephone game. Somebody said this happened here, then you get to the phone, the next person, 3 people down, said it's slightly different this way. The gist of the story is the same, it's just the little details get changed around a little bit. That's not an easy it's not an easy topic, especially when it comes down to representation for people out there that are gripping to a character that is no longer there. And I understand where people are coming from, but this is what happened, and this is what we're dealing with. There's nothing I can say that's going to make people feel better about this, but I'm just giving my own 2 cents on what I personally think. And as a story, I really like the story. I was excited that they adapted something that I thought at the time was really good. And not until somebody brought up the character was missing did I actually say, oh yeah, like that could be a problem. That could be a problem, and hopefully they address that and are a little bit more sensitive, Lucasfilm, going forward about if there is something that's going to have an impact on certain members of the community, maybe they should have taken more care with it. But what about you, Ben?
Oh boy, when it comes to canon, that's a tricky discussion. I mean, we've talked about it before. This issue, it's like the canon discussion got brought up during Bad Batch, of course, as you mentioned. And like that was kind of my take back then, was the whole, I think we have to realize that like maybe some of these stories, like this is how I like I mean, in my like headcanon, my I guess justification for some of the differences in stories, whether it be comics, books, movies, shows, video games, etc. Like the story we're seeing, like we're not watching straight up reality on any of these stories. Like no matter any of them, whether it be Force Awakens, Last Jedi, whatever, or any of these shows, I think we're like witnessing stories being told maybe from people in the galaxy. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
people that witness these events. Like the stories of the Last Jedi, for example. Like it was from random people that told about this stuff and blah 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 blah. And that's what we end up seeing on screen. So like I feel like that's kind of like how I justify some of like maybe inconsistencies between things. I just feel like it's like it's different stories being told by different storytellers in universe and of course out of universe. As you mentioned, the the differences between the book and this, it's Filoni and E.K. Johnson, so it's two totally different creators. Obviously, Johnson had the short treatment from Filoni for the book, but the thing is, to me, um, it just comes down to stories being told from different perspectives. And then in terms of like the representation matter of the character not being in that sequence, like you mentioned, it's great to have representation of like the LGBTQ community or like minorities in general, whether it be like African American or Polynesian or whatever it may be, like it's or women. It's great to have like representation, but when it comes to a situation like this, I feel like it would be it would be more. Of course, like I can't speak to like authoritatively because I'm not a part of those listed communities. In terms of like I'm not that like, but I think when it comes to it, you know, we have to realize like for one, the story that was being told, that episode was like 14 minutes long, so there's not even enough time to develop even the Inquisitor. Look, we were with the Inquisitor how long? 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't even have enough time to even realize who that Inquisitor was. Much less another side character that Ahsoka, that isn't like, that isn't, in the main gist of the story with Ahsoka for this episode. Like, the character may be more involved in the books, which is great, but for this specific version of the story being told, like, to me, like when you go into this episode, like you're going into it watching for the character of Ahsoka. You're not going like the story is meant to be for Ahsoka. It's not meant to be for any of the other characters. The other characters, in my opinion, I mean, this is even with the Count Dooku stuff. All of the stuff, like even in the Count Dooku episodes, that's meant to like pump up Count Dooku more. Like it's supposed to shine the spotlight on Dooku, no one else. Like the other characters are ancillary characters throughout that. Even the bigger characters that we see in the Dooku episodes. Even with this whole Ahsoka arc, all three of these episodes. Sure, we mentioned Anakin and Obi-Wan. Sure, we mentioned her mother and stuff. But the gist of these arcs are for Dooku, are for Ahsoka. It's not meant for any other character. Like because to me, part of the issue as well that comes up when like we get into like a deeper discussion about this sort of stuff is like would have there still been an issue if like for example say that character that the LGBT character was in this episode, but what if the character only had one line? Would have that been an issue that they only had one line versus being a pivotal part of the episode? Then you get into that whole discussion. So like to me, I think there's a lot of gray area when it comes to balance with this sort of stuff. And then as I mentioned, at the end of the day, like the story is about Ahsoka. It's not about any of the other characters. The other characters are meant to support the lead, which is Ahsoka in this instance.
Yeah, yeah. You only have so much time, and what's not to say that this character isn't off screen somewhere. It's a village. They could have somebody around the corner. You don't know. And I think that's probably why they Filoni just specifically didn't name the characters, is to make it like we were saying before. This is like an alternate history, or not an alternate history, but like this is a story that may or might not be like the one you've read before. So there's got to be.
Here's the thing,
give and
Chris.
take.
What if this story is getting told from that character that we're talking about? What if that character is the one telling this story about this Jedi that comes to their village and all this sort of stuff? Like, that's the thing. Like, we don't know. Like, a lot of people, want to jump into it instantly. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's like, maybe this is the characters telling the story, for example. Like, you never know with Star Wars. Like, I mean, heck, going back to the original trilogy, George Lucas, like, if you look up Lucas's early processes for Star Wars, like, look at his, like, early scripts when Luke was even called Starkiller, like, the story was getting told, like, the galactic story, like, what we see, for example, like, the opening crawl, all of that is, like, the Wills characters, like, the actual Wills beings writing the story of Star Wars, like, in a book. So, like, the thing is, like, the whole genesis of Star Wars comes from characters telling these stories. So, like, that's my thing. I think everything we're witnessing in Star Wars is someone telling the story. We're not actually witnessing the reality of what maybe 1000% happened.
So there's what's happening with a little bit of discussions going on online. I'm just looking mainly at Twitter, actually Facebook a little bit too.
Yep.
So hopefully, in the future, Lucasfilm will be able to glean more about their creative process of how this went down. Be very curious to see about that. But I guess what we'll do is we'll give our score out of 10 for just the Ahsoka side of the shorts. I'll go ahead and give them an 8.5 out of 10. I will say all around, really enjoyed them. The cinematics, everything. The CGI was incredible. The animation was incredible. Picks up with Bad Batch, looked fantastic. Music was great. What brought the score down for me was that second episode. Practice Makes Perfect. I feel like it was just a little bit too surface level. It felt like it was just made to answer like a very simple question of like, oh, how did Ahsoka survive the clones? Like, we're gonna make a whole short about this, So it felt like it was just a little bit unnecessary. Like, you could have just used your head to figure that one out, kind of thing. But I mean, it's more Star Wars to watch, which is a great thing. And as we just spent a while on, I really dug that Lucasfilm did an adaptation of a novel that I think it worked for me. And it's not going to work for everybody, but it worked for me. And seeing the darkness, seeing the beginning of Ahsoka, and seeing her through the different times is just a really cool thing. So 8.5 out of 10 for me.
Nice. That's a good evaluation for me. I think all 3 episodes were really good. I really enjoyed a lot about the first one. The lessons and principles Ahsoka learned, I thought were done really well in it. I really do. I don't know what it is. I just love the tiger sound in Star Wars. I just love that they use a tiger like growl. Like, I don't know. I always think the tiger growl or snarl is always one of the coolest noises in general. So, like, it's cool that they had that in there. And then when it comes to the second episode, I thought that was. See, I kind of was like a little bit more different than you on it. Like, my assessment of it, like, I thought it was really, really good actually, because like I didn't think of it from like the point of view of like it answering a question. Like, see, I got to the end of it and I was like, oh, cool, this is connecting to the end of Clone Wars Season 7. Like, I thought of it from that light. Like, like I thought of it more of like an excitement. Like, I didn't think of it, as in like answering a question. So like I had actually no problem with that.
Okay.
So like that was kind of like my first initial reaction. I can 100% see where you're coming from. Like, oh, they might just be answering like a little teeny Twitter question somebody tweeted in or something, and was like, hey, how does Ahsoka know how to do this? And they're like, oh, here's a story. So I can see where you're coming from with that, but for me, I thought it was totally fine. I thought it was pretty cool. And then the final episode I thought was the best of the 3 though, by far. Just because everything that we just discussed, like, seeing Ahsoka's journey going from like her being a baby to basically a full-grown master, I would say, at that point, like getting to see that character arc, I thought was done really well, surprisingly well, because if you think about it, that was only maybe 45 minutes max of screen time, and we basically get her full character arc from baby to master. Like, I thought that was
Yeah.
done really well. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the whole fight between her and the Inquisitor, I just thought, like I said, I watched it a few times already this week because it's so dang good. So dang good. I just love it. Like, man, don't get me wrong. I don't want to like start like, we just now got a novel adapted. But man, I'm like, I want to see that live action. How cool would that be to see that same
Ooh.
sequence in like a 2 minute live action sequence? Like,
Yeah.
man, that would be awesome. Holy smokes. Um, but like for me, I would say like I texted you guys in the group chat. Like this series, I mean, it'll spoil my sequence for my rating for next week for Dooku, but I think this is all 10 out of 10. Like I don't think there's like anything like to me. There's no like parts of it I don't enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me, I think it was just 10 out of 10, and it's like it's the most like excited I've felt about Star Wars content in some time. Honestly, like it just I had a good time with it. I didn't go in with like any like expectations, like like other things, and I just had a really good time with it. Like to me, it was a 10 out of 10, and I really hope as we're wrapping the Tales of the Jedi discussion, I really hope this is my pitch, Dave Filoni, if you're listening at this point in the podcast. Um, Next season, don't do Jedi. Make it say season 2, bum bum bum, Tales of the Sith, and
Yeah.
then do 2 featured Sith, and maybe I don't know, do like young Darth Maul and young I don't know whoever else, young Palpatine. I mean, heck, you could do that, but like
Mm.
I would love to see them go into a Tales of the Sith and then season 3 Tales of the Jedi and just kind of alternate it, because the good thing with this is, as you mentioned, Chris, like with this just being kind of like Dave Filoni's almost pet project, like he could just do this in his free time between his live action shows, like he could just do this, hey, when I have free time over a month or two, here and there, write out some treatments for these shows and whatnot and go from there. Like this could just be an indefinite like series, because there's plenty of characters they could continue to do this about.
Oh yeah, I like your idea with making a different theme every year and base it upon
Yep.
different eras, because this one specifically
Yep.
says in the description it's based in the prequel era. Let's get some
Yep.
original trilogy. Heck, let's get some sequel trilogy. Make it almost like Clone Wars. Start bridging that gap. Start buffing up the character motivations in the sequel trilogy. Get our Ben Solo, get our Luke Skywalker Ben Solo stories, right? Get all that stuff
Yeah.
there, because that's going to make a huge difference. And there's so much to go. I mean, we'll have so much more to say next week, but believe it or not, the show's not over. We have a whole nother episode to talk about. If you're joining us now on the podcast, we have just talked about the first 3 shorts out of 6 shorts, the Ahsoka shorts themselves. Now we're diving into Andor Season 1, Episode 8, titled Narkina 5. In this one, we have what looks like the brand new of another 3-episode arc. We see that Andor gets transported to Narkina 5, a brand new, or not brand new, but like a new prison that we haven't seen in Star Wars before. Penal colony, whatever you want to call it. Manufacturing, that prisoners are working on this stuff. We have what's happening on Ferrix. We have Marva, who has apparently already started to rebel in her own ways. And we have the spies of Cinta and Vel out on the lookout for Andor. And we have the coming together of different factions. We have Cyril Karn and Dedra Miro. She's asking information now that she has control of the Ferrix sector and investigating Andor. And of course, we have Mon Mothma with some more fancy soirees she's throwing at her place, getting more support and learning more about what's going on with the politics. And finally, we have Luthen meeting with Saul Guerrera, trying to recruit him into the wider scope of the what will eventually be the Rebel Alliance. So a lot to break down on this episode. I think we'll just start off with the title character himself, with Andor. First off, though, what'd you think about this episode, Ben? Right off the top.
Yeah, I mean, all right, I can say I went into it at first with a little bit of negative thinking because like I saw a lot of people, even people who really like this series so far. I saw a lot of people going into it. Like I have a good friend who thinks it's like the best thing since sliced bread, this entire series, which is awesome. And he even was like, "Man, this is kind of slow. I don't know how I liked it. Blah blah blah. You'll just have to wait and see." So I went into it kind of thinking, "Oh man, if someone who really likes the show doesn't like this episode, what am I gonna think?" Since I've been kind of mid tier on this show. But I watched it. I really enjoyed the episode actually, surprisingly. Like I surprised myself at it actually because I wasn't thinking I was going to, based on like some like I said, other people's influences. But I really enjoyed it. Like I liked seeing Cassian's like working place he was at, like how like the Imperial punishment was like being done. I thought it was interesting. There were some little tidbits people might have missed over or glossed over during the episode. Like I don't know, when he was getting introduced to all of his coworkers and stuff. Like, did you notice his boss said like he like all this stuff has to go smoothly because he's in there too. Like the boss is a prisoner as well. He's not an
yeah.
Imperial worker. Like I thought that was a nice little detail. I was like, oh, that's cool. I thought that was neat. Like based on like the whole like frying thing and all that sort of stuff, Cassian's probably going to befriend some of these people, and then someone's going to get taken out. I feel like most likely, and then yeah, like I thought that was done really well. And then for me, like you said, seeing Mon Mothma and like her whole thing that she has going on there, like you always like her character and like the development of her like getting more and more involved in the Empire or the Rebels, and then like you mentioned, having Luthen meet Saul. I thought that was very, very well done. I was surprised because I can 100% say my only or one of my main critiques over Rogue One is I just don't like Saul Guerrero in that movie. Like I know I'm in the minority of people who don't, but I just think he's like way too cartoony in Rogue One. But in this, I'm so glad they made him like normal. Like he's not like full blown crazy yet. So I really do like that. I was like half expecting like the Borgullet thing to come out or something. But I'm glad that didn't happen. So I really liked his character a lot. And yeah, for me, I enjoyed this episode. I didn't mind it.
Heck yeah! So let's talk about this location of Narkina 5, however you pronounce it. It was intense. Like this episode was intense. Like I felt like I was going to prison. They really sold me on that idea of like the confusion. 1 minute Andor's just chilling. Next thing you know, he's getting shepherded onto these transports. I don't know if you caught it, but one of them was going to Belsavis. Belsavis, I've been there many times. Belsavis is a prison planet that was in the Old Republic video game. You go to Belsavis, you have
cool.
all the criminals are there. You take down a bunch of criminal gangs that broke out of the prison. It's like, oh my gosh, we were so close to going to Belsavis in live action. That would have been so cool. But yeah, everything from the moment they get there, and then they have these. And we keep seeing this. I don't know. Are those Imperial? Like, is this factory an Imperial factory? Or is it like the Imperials brought these guys to like a third party? Kind of like Merlana 1 was in cahoots with their security guys. Cyril Karn was in cahoots with the Empire, but they weren't really the Empire. Is this what's happening? Or is this like an actual Imperial manufacturing? Because like when those guys walked up with those like sneakers on, I was like, first off, like, what's with that costume? It's like, what's going on here? I have to go back and watch it. I don't know if they had like Imperial logos on or what.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I was thinking it was like a contracted workplace. Like I didn't think this was straight up. I don't think this was Imperial territory. Like, of course, everything's Imperial territory technically, but you know what I mean. I don't think this was really being overseen by like the direct Empire. I mean, heck. You don't really see it, or I really don't think it is, just because, like, sure, Cassian's not directly named Cassian Andor in this exact instance, but I would feel like if it was, Like there would have been like facial scan things or something like because the Empire, as we know, when we get into the other stuff with Marina and Cyril Karn, like he's not like Cassian's still technically on the run in their eyes. So like even though they don't even realize they have him captured. So to me, I think it's like a third party location.
Yeah. Yeah. And they sell you on it too because it's like he's screwed. I mean, you see the outside. It reminded me of the raft from the Marvel movies. It's their prison where it's in the middle of the ocean. It submerges under there. You're screwed. Once you're in there, you're never getting out again. And even one of the inmates was like, "Hey, just enjoy your last look at the sun because you're never gonna see that until you're out." And
Yep.
it was a really good representation of a prison system slash factory workplace in the Star Wars universe. Now you mentioned the boss. Now, is there anything you want to mention about the boss specifically?
I mean, he looked really familiar. I know that. Like, I don't know, the actor that played him, I think, looked familiar, but I think the boss specifically, I mean, he's a prisoner too. Like, he's a prisoner as well, anyways, I think. I mean, the way he talked, like, he said, he was like, you gotta, or, I only have 247 days or whatever he said left in my sentence, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
Like, I don't know, am I missing something?
I'm about to blow your mind. That was Andy Serkis.
Really? Oh, wow. I knew his voice sounded familiar.
I was
Like,
waiting for you to say something. You're like the boss, and I'm like, you said it like you didn't know who he was. I had to make sure that's Andy Serkis.
oh,
I
Snoke
knew
confirmed.
right. I knew right away. I was like, I sat up in my cell. Wait, that's Andy Serkis. I did the whole Leonardo DiCaprio meme. It's like, wait a minute, like. This was a
I did
guy
not.
that was playing Snoke. I don't know if we've gotten that in Star Wars before, where it's like they play like the CGI character. Well, actually, we did. Luke Skywalker voices a character or two in Star Wars. Yeah, but this is cool still. I mean, Andy Serkis getting time, and he's not some side character. Like I'm assuming that this guy's gonna persist for the rest of this so-called arc, since he's like the one in charge.
Oh yeah, I feel like with his character, I don't know. I could see him befriending Cassian. Like
Yeah, oh yeah.
at some point, he's 100% gonna befriend Cassian. Like because he's gonna be like, oh man, this guy's being productive, blah blah blah. Like they're gonna get like friendly. But yeah, see, I knew there was something up with that boss though because I was like, man, he looks so familiar. And I even paused it. Here's the funny part too. I even paused it. I was like, is that Timothy Oliphant? That's what at first I thought. I was like, no, that's not him. I was like, I don't know who that is, but he looks familiar. Um, but but yeah, I really I think his character is going to be an interesting one because he's for sure going to be involved to some degree. I mean, maybe even potentially like I could see something going along the lines of like it's going to be kind of like the one dude from kind of like Hux. I could see him being kind of like Hux, where he's like, "Hey, I'll let you break out, but knock me out or something first," type deal. Something like that. Like I could see something along those lines happen, just because he's definitely going to befriend Cassian, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at these guys again because Gonzo's chiming in saying that it definitely appears like I'm looking at the dude's hats, and they have like the same hat that Piet wears. Like it's like the little metal thing on the
Mm.
cap there. But here's another thing. I don't know if you picked this up. Another little Easter egg here. One of the people that's on that work team is a character from Rogue One. It's one of the strike team leaders of Melchi.
All right, I thought I recognized that
Yeah,
character. I thought I recognized that character. I just can't believe I didn't recognize Andy Serkis.
it was. Yeah, I was like, wait, I had to do a double take. Like, wait, that's actually him. Like, and he's actually got like a pretty good role.
Yeah.
Now, I just like how I mean, it might be an argument of a negative for this episode where it's like, okay, they cut back to this prison thing like too many times. Like they're spending like too much screen time on just showing the doldrums. And it's like they're drilling it into us like so hard that we're feeling like we're being overcome almost by like this whole ordeal that Andor. there's quite a bit of time jumps. Like at one point, I think it's like a month, and another month goes by. So there's a lot of momentum as far as we're telling the story here. Now, I had some ideas that I don't know if you thought about this at all. About maybe these are components of the Death Star. What happens if this is how Andor gets on the trail that there is some super weapon being made? He doesn't obviously flat out know what it is, but he knows the Empire is building something big, and this is going to propel him to somehow get into cahoots with Saw Gerrera, who will then also have that big trek and journey throughout the galaxy, as we know, where he goes crazy trying to figure out about it. So, did you think that this could be also linked to the Death Star? What these X component things that they're making are?
Um, I mean, I would say probably, or like it's. I feel like it'd probably be trending in that direction because what else would they be working on at this time? Like it's got to be, it's got to be like to me just like putting the dots together. It's got to be part of the Death, like different parts of the Death Star. And yeah, like you have so many people working on it because you heard Andy Serkis say like we're like 52A for like morning shift. So obviously there's like a 52 like P for like probably PM night shift or whatever. And the thing is when he says 52, that means there's like 51 other levels probably below that or like 51 other things. So like this is a huge operation they're involved in. It's like to me, it's got to be like Death Star related, most likely.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's gonna fuel some of like Cassian's speculation as to like you said, he's not gonna know Death Star, but he's gonna know something.
Yeah, and Dark Dirty Gods was calling something else I was going to pull out. There's a lot of symmetry and kind of this is almost like similar to that THX 1138. I feel like that this whole segment is a love letter to TH 1138. I've never watched the movie personally, but I've seen a plenty of like scenes and behind the scenes stuff in Star Wars documentaries to know like this is George Lucas's first like film he made, and it's all stark white in a prison basically of this guy trying to get out, as I recall is what it is. And it's like all the soldiers are just very much like almost like robots, and it's just very monochrome in design. And yeah, so I think this whole segment is just clearly an homage to that, which is neat.
Oh, for sure. Like actually, that's something that I felt when I was watching it. I was like, man, this kind of reminds me of THX 1138. Like that vibe. That's literally like one of the vibes I got from it. And also another little thing I got out of it too, I thought that was interesting. Again, humanizing the Empire more. Like the fact when they were showing Cassian around, they're like, "Oh, hey, eat as much as you want, drink as much as you want from this thing," because like they don't want you to be like not a good worker, basically. So like I was surprised because I was like, "Oh man, are we gonna get like some Cassian like starving type sequences or something?" Because I got a little nervous because to me that whole trope in movies, like in prison, starving, like it's just gotten so old. I'm sick of seeing it, honestly, because it's just so cliche. So it's nice that they didn't do that for this sequence, actually, because that means we're not going to waste time on him scrounging around for food or something. So it was good that they kept it moving, didn't worry about that. And then just like some of the other like little details throughout the episode, like Gonzo mentioned, I believe, like you said, like the symmetry in the episodes, because it was like what 7, like 7 tables, 7 people, and so on and so on.
Let's switch it up to another character, and that's Cyril Karn and Deidre Miro. So the last episode, we got a lot of like the table setting plot lines as we're getting characters reacting to Aldhani, but also looking ahead to the future. And here we're having one of our first big collision courses of main characters that we've been following. And I assume this was happening. It's pretty kind of easy to predict that these characters were eventually going to come into contact with one another. And it didn't go the way I thought. And I thought she would break down and Daedra would just be like, okay, you're pestering me enough. come with me. But she just straight up says, no, like, I got stuff I got to do. You're crazy. I just want you for information. You're not helpful. I'm out of here. And here, this is his one lifeline. Like, this is his lifeline to get that chance of being something. He needs that recognition. He wants that validity of getting that what he deserves. So how'd you feel about this whole sequence with just these two characters here and what's happening with Cyril Karn and his nice Star Wars suit?
Well, luckily for Milton's sake, he didn't stare at the camera too much during this episode. But no, for real, I thought it was a pretty good sequence, honestly. Like with her and him, she's definitely one of my favorite characters of the series. Like I know she's not a main character, like she's definitely one of my favorite side characters, I would say. I think they've really developed her well. And then, just like you said, her whole relationship with him, I assumed the same thing you did as well. Like I thought it was just going to go, she's reached her breaking point with him. Just come along. Let's see what you got to do, and you can join us type deal. I thought that's how it was going to go down. But I was glad it didn't specifically go that way, just because it's like, again, talk about tropes like the starving prison thing. Like again, like that's a typical thing of like, oh, pester, pester, pester. Okay, main character breaks because they're getting pestered by someone. Like I'm glad that didn't go that direction exactly. And I thought they did a good job with his screen time in this episode because, as we mentioned, like, don't get me wrong, some people may have enjoyed like the stuff with him so far, but some of the scenes, like from my taste anyways, have felt like they've like lingered too much with him in the past on prior episodes. So it's nice, like they kept these ones, to a point. They edited them pretty well. And I just thought it was done pretty well, but it's going to push his character forward even more, I would say, to like really get on like the Cassian hunt. And to me, it's interesting because like we have to be getting him interacting with Cassian face to face at some point, right? Like, like we got to get the moment of him going, "Hey, it's you! Get back here! Like I recognize you!" Blah blah blah. Like it's got to be that we got to be getting that type of deal, because if not, then I don't know what his story's about. But we got to get him interacting with Cassian at some point. I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know why he would go to that factory, but maybe he goes there for something. I don't even know. But like, he's got to interact. His story, like this whole sequence with her. It's got to be just to push him closer to Cassian, I would say.
Yeah, it's gonna get him there eventually. What about Mon Mothma's scene now? What I take from this is her daughter Lita seems like she's, I don't know, maybe she's part of the Empire. Honestly, like maybe she seems like she's too snoopy. She's like always like wondering what's going on. She might be betraying her own mother, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, of course, it's the whole, we didn't see her in the other movies or even Rebels or anything. But again, like, the easy answer for that is they could just be on a different planet living undercover or something. Like, that's the easy, logical answer. But then again, the Star Wars fan answer in us is, like, maybe she could be part of the Empire. Like, because if you, heck, look at it from, like, what we just went over with Ahsoka. We had that kid in the village, or that person in the village, supporting the Empire. Blah blah blah. What if her daughter like isn't an Imperial agent per se? Like, what if she's just like ends up being an Imperial supporter, and like, then it's going to add an extra layer to Mon Mothma, because I could easily see us getting into a conversation or a situation where. Like we get another rebel activity thing on the news, and like Mon Mothma's like not saying anything, just observing it, being like, "Oh, this is good," thinking to herself, and then you have her daughter like openly say like, "Oh man, the Empire needs to crush those rebels," blah 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 blah. Like, I could see her daughter being like a big supporter potentially, because, like you said, she seems so snooty and snoopy. Like she's always asking like, "What are you talking about? What are you doing? What like that sort of stuff." So it's like, there's got to be something there because, like we just said with Cyril Karn and Cassian, there. I mean, again, it could just be a side character, but I feel like there's going to be some type of a payoff, whether it be a little one or a big one, with Mon Mothma and her daughter, because we keep getting these scenes with her and her daughter, her and her daughter, her and her daughter. Like, there's got to be something building in the background, I would say.
Yeah, what do you think about? See, because for this scene, since I've only watched this episode once, I guess maybe it didn't leave enough of an impact. Like, I'm still trying to think back of what actually was done with the whole politics conversations in this episode, because I guess it didn't leave much of an impact for me, but I'm trying to remember what headway was gained here.
So I actually watched the episode this morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I watched it this morning, so it was fresh. Like, basically they're just talking, she's talking to one dude about basically, how can I explain it? It's like the Empire's mega monitoring the bank accounts. Mm-hmm. So basically, and she's basically saying, I think she said she needed 300,000 or 400,000 more, and he basically is like, "Hey, the Empire's really monitoring bank accounts," and she's like, "Well, can we do this before like that security protocol is like put into place?" Like, she's basically saying, like, "Can we rush this money transfer before the Empire starts like monitoring your bank account?" Basically, type deal. So it's basically that is like the gist of the conversation. It's revolving around basically more funding, and basically, and establishing more of the whole, she's being watched more, her bank accounts are getting watched, like, she's, more and more like, she's getting looked at more, basically.
Sure. So taking a trip over to Ferrix now, we got more characters coming together. We have Marva interacting with Bix, and then you have the other big dude that's a friend of Andor. I'm not really sure what his name was. The guy that worked on the fields there, breaking down salvage. But yeah, there goes, like, Marva wasn't kidding. Like, she's already making a fuss and getting in trouble. So it's the effects of her son. Little did he know that he would start so much ruckus that would even trickle down to be his mother that's doing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hear him talk in that conversation. I mean, like, how she's like, she's like, the one girl, she's like, she believes, the rebels could use the tunnel that's like under the street or whatever to like ambush the stormtroopers or whatever she says. Like, so, like, we're getting like those parts of the rebellion added in, or like just like the galactic, like, underlying resentment of the Empire, like, from certain people, more baked into the show.
Yeah, now Bix is having her communication shut down completely by Luthen, and it's really going to that scene too about Clea and Luthen, and who's really running the show, because I really am starting to like Clea a lot as a character. Doesn't help that she's really attractive as the actress, so I'm just like, oh. But as far as the character having these motivations, like, who's really in control here? Is it her or is it him? Because she's making the moves, and before in the other episode, at the end of it, it's like she's all saying about, you gotta, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Like, she seems like she's more in control sometimes. Is she really the one that's actually running the rebellion, or is it him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could definitely see that being the case, because more and more with him, specifically, it feels like he's one of those characters. He's kind of like Krennic to a degree. He's kind of like Krennic. He wants to be higher up than he actually is, I think. Like, that's kind of the vibes I get from him. Like, he feels more and more like he's one of those characters, like, working their way up the ladder. Like, he wants to be the rebel guy. You know what I mean? Like, the main rebellious character, I guess. He wants to be like that main one, but I don't think he's there yet. And like you said, I feel like it could be her. Just the way, like, they've been working her character into these episodes. What they're doing with her, like with the shots, the story. I feel like it could be transitioning maybe toward her, and we're going to find out more maybe in the next, like, episode or two.
Yeah, and at least we know in this episode, in this interaction, that she wasn't really going against his back to put out the hit on Cassian. It seems like Luthen does acknowledge that and understands what's going on there. But meanwhile, you have Vel and you have Cinta that are on Ferrix, and now they separated, right? Now I don't know why are they still on the same planet? Did somebody leave completely? What's going on there?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't. I guess there really wasn't an explanation, or if there was, it might have been really quick as to why. But I don't remember like a direct explanation as to why they were still there. Because like you said, you'd assume they would be gone by now. Um, but I feel like I don't know. Like I can't really guess an in universe reason why. I'd say maybe out of universe it probably just fits like whatever story they're trying to like. Cassian may have to go back there at some point. Like I feel like it's going to be something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more like it's probably more like plot device for the story than anything. I would say because like I can't really think of an in universe reason as to why they would stay there unless. I mean, then again, I guess when you hear Marina and Cyril Karn talking, like there's talk of like total lockdown on some of these systems or whatever. So like maybe like it's getting locked down. So maybe that's why they couldn't leave. Like that could be an actual pretty good reason why I would say.
What if and he still has to get out of prison, but what if Vel or Cinta becomes pretty ruthless and gets to Marva, finds out that she's the mother of Cassian, and holds her hostage for freaking Cassian to come down? Right? Wouldn't that be something if they?
Yeah.
Oh, and how would Cassian react? He would be out for cold blood if they try to do that on her. He
Oh yeah.
would go
Go
kind
on.
of crazy.
Oh, for sure. Like I think yeah, I feel like it's got to be heading in that direction because again, like we're talking payoffs with these characters, payoffs with Mon Mothma and her daughter, payoffs with Cyril Karn and Cassian, payoffs with Marina, payoffs with all these characters, Luthen, whatever. There's got to be payoffs with Cassian's mom, or like, well, stepmom or whatever. Like, there's got to be payoffs with her. Like, it's got to be, like you said, it's got to be something like she's getting held hostage, or um, anything. Or are we going to get like an Anakin Attack of the Clones finding his mom just about dead type thing? Like, maybe something like that. Um, I do think though we're going to get to a point though in this series. I think Cassian's going to kill one of our main rebel characters. I do think that. Like I've been in that boat since maybe a couple episodes ago. I was thinking about that during like the sixth episode even because um, I feel like he's going to have to get to like that hard decision point because with Luthen endorsing like them wanting to take Cassian out, I think we're going to get to a point Cassian's going to have to like maybe try to however he gets out of prison. But when he
Hmm.
gets to that point, whenever he interacts with like Luthen or one of these people, like if I had to bet, I feel like he might kill Luthen. Like I think that's what might happen just because like we haven't really had Cassian get to a point where he's had to make a hard decision just yet. Like
Yeah.
no matter like say what you want, like he didn't really know Luthen or whatever, but he in the back of his head he knows Luthen and like the rebels are probably trying to do something good for the galaxy. So like he's not gonna want to cold hearted kill him. But I think we're gonna get to that point. It's gonna be
Mm.
something like Han with Woody Harrelson in Solo. It's
Yeah.
gonna be
Back
something like
it.
that.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, showdown.
Yep.
Man, and we'll finish off by talking about the interaction between Saw and Luthen. I enjoyed seeing Benthic Two Tubes as we've seen him in the trailer. We see the Cavern Angels. And it was cool getting a reference to them in this conversation where that's exactly what Luthen wants, is he wants the Cavern Angels squadron of Saul's partisans to help in this battle against this Imperial installation. Are going to do a hit and run, I guess, on it. And he's not buying in. Luthen tries and tries, and he's not buying. But I like the interaction when he meets. He's like, "Was that you? No, I thought that was you. Was that you?" It's just like they're going back and forth. Like nobody's really trying to give up too much information. but this is the deals that the rebels have to make. And I thought it was so cool the layers that these guys have, where it's like that feels very real world, where it's like, all right, what do you have for me that's gonna make me actually do your task? Like, what's in this for me, right? There's a price for everything. At this point, this price is not worth Saul. He walks, or he has Luthen walk because that's his base. But yeah, what was your reaction to this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned when we started, I was surprised. I was surprised I liked it. Just because, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Saw Gerrera in Rogue One at all, and like I was like, oh man, here we go to Saw. Let's get ready for some boar gullet and some crazy stuff. And luckily, like he wasn't at that point yet. So I was like, okay, good. Like this isn't too cartoony. And I do feel like even if Saw would have been at that point, I don't know, because like we said, Tony Gilroy, he covered like the last 20 minutes of Rogue One. So I don't know if he even directed Forrest Whitaker in Rogue One. So like, I think he would have maybe not made he would have maybe toned Saw Gerrera down a little bit. But yeah, I really liked the interaction between him and Luthen. I actually liked like that scene. This sequence made me like Saw Gerrera in live action because before this I was like, man, I don't need to see any more of that. Like I'm good. But this actually made me like him. So I'm like, okay, I'm fine with seeing more of him now, as long as Tony Gilroy is directing him. And then just the whole conversation, like you said, like the like almost playful back and forth, I guess you would say, between the two. Like kind of like not giving up too much info to each other. And like to me, I think it like leads or it's foreshadowing to like Saul's gonna get involved somehow. Like, we're gonna get some type of battle, some type of something, maybe a sabotage, something or another. Like there's going to be something where Saul and his group get involved. Uh, because I highly doubt we just have this one scene with them. I feel like we're going to get some type of thing. I mean, I think you and me and Milton mentioned it maybe weeks ago. It was maybe like when we were reviewing the first 2 or 3 episodes, or maybe the fourth one. But like, we got to get to a point where we have like Mon Mothma in the fight, basically, and Luthen and Cassie and all these people in the fight, and now Saw Gerrera in the fight. Like, we got to get to some point where all these characters are like kind of crossing paths with each other. So like, we haven't got to that battle yet, or mission, or sabotage, or stealing, or whatever it may be. We haven't got to that yet, but I think it's heading in that direction of where we're going to get to that big hurrah, basically. Chris, you're muted. You're muted.
We're gonna see that space battle because we see it in trailers where there's just different it's just the Luthen ship is flying around. I think they could have
Yep.
easily CGI'd out TIE fighters or X-Wings, Cavern Angels X-Wings. I think that's going to be our big battle for this season, which will be cool because we haven't really gotten a huge space battle in Star Wars, so that'll be interesting.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I feel like, and I think it could end up being something along those like multi-dimensional lines of like you got the space battle, you got the ground thing with Cassian, like whatever he's doing. Like I think we're gonna get like a three-layer fight type deal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Heck yeah. So wrapping things up, just generally speaking, what were your overall thoughts and score out of 10 on the episode?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned when we started talking about it, I went into it with a negative outlook at first because of people influencing me on it. But then when I watched it, I really didn't mind it. I thought it was good. I thought it added some interesting points. Like we mentioned, we finally got to see kind of like how an imperial. I mean, sure, that's not specifically an imperial jail. Like it's an imperial jail job, but like we got to see how like the penalty system works. I mean, even little tidbits in there, like I mean, you hear him. might have been Andy Serkis, might have been one of the other workers, but they mentioned everybody's sentences got doubled. And Cassian,
Mm-hmm.
he went in for 6 years, so like technically he's in there now for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that, and then you really have. So I thought that was cool, like little tidbits like that, like the interactions there at the workplace, and then of course all the Mon Mothma stuff is really good. And then you also have, uh, like I mentioned, Saul Guerrero. I actually like Saul Guerrero now. I thought his character, like acting from Forrest Whitaker, was really good. And then, just a lot of the stuff about the episode. Marina, the Imperial officer girl, she's been one of my favorite like side characters. As I mentioned, I've really enjoyed her character a lot. And yeah, overall, I'm actually excited for next week's episode. Like I'm definitely excited to see where this leads to, because I think a lot of pieces are getting put into place for the puzzle. And now, for me, I would have to give this episode an 8 out of 10. Actually.
I will echo that 8 out of 10 with your 8 out of 10. And for all the reasons we were talking about, not much has changed from my initial score with this discussion. I was pretty dead set on that for the most part. My only hang-ups were maybe spending too much time at this prison, or too many shots that
Yep.
were very similar, dwelling too long on those. The Mon Mothma conversation kind of seemed a little bit redundant, a little bit, but you helped better explain that for me. So now I have a clear view. But at the time, it was just like, oh, more of this. I guess part of me is just wanting to see, Sly more already, because every time we see a party, it's like, oh, there's a chance where one of those familiar aliens could be showing up in the shot, but so far nothing. Sly Moore watch continues, as well as Masameda watch,
Yep.
Grand Vizier. But yeah, we have all those cool things coming together. But I like the things coming together, like one of the storylines, Cyril, Karn, and Dedra Mira. Been seeing that coming, kind of. We're dead set on this guy joining the Empire now. For a couple episodes, for me, he could have gone to Rebels, he could have gone Imperials, but having that personal vendetta against Cassian makes sense that he is going to be going against him, even if he takes matters into his own hands and says, okay, if the Empire won't help me, I'll just take him down myself, and he'll be like the rogue agent kind of thing, which is always fun in these spy thriller movies. But yeah, getting to that and just seeing my buddy Saul. I put out that video earlier this week. You could check it out about the entire Saul timeline, from video games to young reader novels to young adult novels to adult novels. He has been in like every single medium of Star Wars. It's kind of insane. I don't know if any other character has
Yeah.
done that so far. Like every single type of book, all the like he was in a comic, everything, TV series,
Yeah.
animated, movie. I think he is literally the only person that's done that. And the crazy thing is, Saul Guerrero, at least in the speaking parts, other than Clone Wars season 5, has done the voice in basically all the roles too. He's really cool with and down to do that. He's like Anthony Daniels, where they're very protective of their characters, or at least they like to be that character so much that they want to do that other stuff that a lot of the main actors couldn't care less about doing, right? So overall, yeah, 8 out of 10. Really enjoyed this episode. As we said, next week Milton will be back. We'll break down the Dooku episodes, or the Dooku shorts for the Tales of the Jedi shorts, and we'll be talking about episode 9 of Andor and whatever news might break between now and then. So where can the people find you, and what are you going to be up to this week, Ben?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RealBenMaynard. I usually post my workout videos and workouts on Instagram, and then on Twitter, I'm basically just talking football and talking Star Wars, or talking about superhero stuff. So that's pretty much what I'm up to on social media. And then for this weekend, it's going to be a pretty chill weekend, just hanging out by myself, watching football, working out, talking with people about Star Wars, as always, consuming Star Wars content. It's always a fun part of the week. I think one of the best parts about Star Wars content and content in general, which makes me wish Tales of the Jedi was a 6-week event versus one drop, is I really enjoy the week-to-week discussions versus the mass drops of content. Like I've always, as long as it's been a thing, I've always been anti drop the entire season of something. I've always been
Mm-hmm.
against that, because to me, it's way more fun as a fan, like talking about these things week to week to week, because it like builds and builds and builds, and it's like a relationship you build up with other random fans on the internet. It's always a good time. So like that's a nice part of like Andor being as many weeks as it is, just because it's spanning over a few months. So yeah, it's nice being able to talk to fans about this show, and yeah, that's all I'm going to be up to is just watching these sports and movies and things like that, because it's getting chillier here. Now that we're at the end of October, and then on Halloween Day, I'm going to watch the original Halloween movie just because that's a classic, and that's like my tradition every year is watch that every year, just because it's like, you can't go wrong with Michael Myers. The original movie was so good, and yeah, that's what I'll be up to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be up to more or less the same. Working out. I jumped on the Old Republic this right before jumping on the call to play through the latest season 3 that went up. Unlocked one of the new protocol droid companions. Other than that, I'm gonna be probably playing some Destiny 2, trying to catch up on that season, trying to get my titles and feeling accomplished there, and maybe jumping on World of Warcraft if I have the time. But other than that, I'll be hanging out with some family, of course, on Halloween. Got to figure out if I'm gonna do a it's not an if. I'm going to do a costume. I don't know if I'm going to do a Star Wars costume or some other random thing I'll put together on my own just with everything I have around here. But other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at Starrapter. Follow Ben on Real Ben Maynard. Follow Milton, who will be with us next week at Real...
his is... Okay, so Milton's Twitter is Milton Weber 7. And then his Instagram, I feel like he's more active on Instagram. You can follow him there, where he posts all of his workouts as well at Milton, the number 7, and then Weber, Milton 7 Weber.
There you go. Yeah, so as far as the content this week, yeah, you're going to see the normal stuff. I got a bunch of comic book reviews coming out this upcoming Wednesday. And then you guys can catch us as always next Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you tell your friends about this show. If you have any Star Wars friends in your life that are looking for some Star Wars commentary, then you can refer them here, and we'll be very thankful for you by doing that. Well, for Ben, for Milton, for I, Chris, a.k.a. Starrapter, that's going to do it for Outer Rim Transmission number 80. Have a good one, guys. May the Force be with you. End transmission. Holy crap.
There we go.